Philadelphia Eagles are headed to Lambeau to face the Packers in Week 10. Welcome to NFL Live on this Tuesday. I'm Dan Graziano, joined by Tim Hasselbeck. Tim, I'm told Peter Schrager and Adam Schefter are on their way, but if it's just you and me today, we will crush it nonetheless. It's schedule release week in the NFL, but before we get to the games, we have some big news coming out of Cincinnati. Trey Hendrickson showed up to the Bengals facility today, and he had a lot to say about his future with the team. Here's some of it.
What I can say is I'm very disappointed with the communication that's been had. It's very, former players have walked in these shoes, and what it foreshadows is not something that I'm excited about to tell my wife and family. They see how hard I work. There's no other organization knows me better than this one. They watch me an individual. They see how I carry myself as a human being, and they know me. You try not to let the business become personal. I think over the last week or so, it's become personal, unfortunately. And when there's a lack of communication in any relationship, if it's business or a personal relationship, lack of communication leads to animosity, and that leaves my narrative only to me with no clear direction. So the lack of direction, the lack of communication is leading to things that are allowing me to think about what's going to happen more than how great they have treated me.
Tim, that all sounds like it's in a great place. What do you make of Trey Hendrickson and his current contract dispute with the Cincinnati Bengals?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of key things to what Trey Hendrickson said there. Like, he obviously, sounds like somebody that's, feels like it's gotten personal. He said as much, and he feels, I think, hurt by how the Bengals have handled this. He sounds like somebody that knows what he's kind of laid on the line for the organization. For some context, he's got 35 sacks in the last 2 years. Like, you could argue that he's been as good as any pass rusher in the NFL over that stretch. He's due to make $15 million. To be honest, like, guys at his position, at his age, probably should be making more than $30 million a year. And so, look, the idea that he wants to, talk and try to work out a long-term deal, but he's feeling like there's not even a, good communication from the organization, I think has led him to the point where he's saying, like, wait a second, like, you know who I am. You know what kind of teammate I've been. You know what kind of member of this organization that I've been. And this is how we're going to communicate about me potentially getting a contract extension. So, look, I understand it. I actually, sympathize with him quite a bit because if you look at the Bengals, especially guys on the defensive side of the ball that probably deserve to be rewarded, Trey Hendrickson would be at the very front of the line.
Sure, and look, they've had conversations throughout the offseason. They did get extensions done with their star wide receivers, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and obviously I think Trey Hendrickson felt like he would be next. They haven't been able to make it work. He's going to be 31 years old at some point this season, and that may be part of the holdup, but nonetheless, things do not seem to be in a great place between Trey Hendrickson and the Bengals. Now, back in February, Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow talked about the contract situations that were coming up this offseason in Cincinnati, and he had some suggestions on how they could make everybody happy. Here's what Burrow said to Barstool Sports at the time. Quote, "You could convert some of the money into a signing bonus, which will lower the cap hit. You can push some of the money to the back end of the contract. That lowers the cap hit. And then when you get to the back end of the contract, you can restructure it and convert it to a signing bonus. The Eagles are paying everybody. That seems like the way, whatever they're doing." So it all sounds simple. There's no doubt about it. When the Bengals have spoken publicly this offseason, they've talked about how they do have the cap space to extend all these guys, Tim. But what do you make of the Burrow side of all this? I'm sure he's happy they got Higgins and Chase done, but he would like Hendrickson there as well.
Yeah, I think this is one of these scenarios where when you're the star player and you're the guy that's making the most money of anybody on the roster, look, your posture and position needs to be exactly what Joe Burrow is saying there, which is very player and teammate friendly. And look, oh, hey, these other teams are doing it, and there's got to be a way to work it out, and I'm willing to be, flexible with how I'm getting paid. Like, that's what you say. Whether it's true or not, like, that's what you you say. And then, ultimately, it's not Joe Burrow's job to be, the salary cap guy. It's the Cincinnati Bengals' job to figure out how to negotiate good deals with their star players, retain their good players, to draft players that can play on rookie contracts. And then it's Joe Burrow's job to try to be as good as Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or anybody that he's going to face in his conference. So I think it's one of these things where, we can put a lot of stock into what Burrow is saying. At the same time, he's always going to be player friendly. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, the team has to decide that they're willing to reward their star players and structure them to deals that make sense. You mentioned Trey Hendrickson's age. Look, yeah, he will turn 31. He's got 35 sacks the last 2 seasons. That is hard to replace. That is really hard to replace. And so I think when you look at it from Cincy's perspective, yeah, it's great to have 2-star wide receivers, but be careful because you might lose your best edge rusher.
As we mentioned earlier, welcome in now Adam Schefter. Adam, what more can you tell us on this whole situation, where things stand with the Bengals and Trey Hendrickson?
It's gotten personal now, Dan, between the Cincinnati Bengals and Trey Hendrickson. And for Trey Hendrickson to come out and say what he has said the last 2 days over the phone with me yesterday, in press conference settings today, that tells you how upset, bothered, and frustrated he is at the pace of these negotiations. If we go back to last year, he felt like he was told that all he had to do was come in, be a good soldier, produce on the field, and he would be rewarded. Well, he came in, he led the NFL in sacks, he didn't say anything, he went through the season and played as well as anybody in all of football, and now this offseason, at a time where he was going into an offseason when he was going into the last year of his contract, and he's scheduled to make $15.8 million this year, he's watched Max Crosby get north of $35 million a year. He's watched Myles Garrett get north of $40 million a year. And here Trey Hendrickson is scheduled to make $15.8 million with less time on his deal, closer to free agency, with a team that told him if he just did what he was supposed to last year, that he would be taken care of this year. And he's frustrated because the team has not only not returned his phone calls since the draft, or at least not communicated with him, but they obviously had comments to make at the owners' meetings about how he should be happy to play for what he's playing for. And then, of course, you have a situation where all these other players are being paid right now. And I just think he feels like it's time to speak up. He's been silent too long. He's let the team dictate how he was going to behave. He's not going to do it anymore. Now he says he's not going to play this season under this contract. Let's just spin it forward a little bit. Sure. Let's say we get into the summer of training camp. You could imagine he'll be holding himself out of practice or saying his back's bothering him and what it would be like going into the opening week of the season. This is a team that has started very slow in recent years. It's trying to reverse all that. They've signed their wide receivers. They haven't signed their defensive end. They need this not to be a distraction going into the season, both sides.
No doubt about it. And obviously his leverage, Adam, as you know, is I'll hold out, I won't play. We've seen some players go into the regular season willing to miss real games in an effort to get what they want out of these contracts. You spoke to him on the phone. You said yesterday, that feels like a realistic possibility to you at this point?
Well, it's middle of May, Dan, right?
Yeah.
And this is his leverage, what he can do. But I think his point is, okay, so if I lose a few $100,000, even $1 million, what are we talking about in the grand scheme of things when there are other pass rushers making north of $35 and $40 million a year, and he's going into the last year of his contract? I think he feels insulted. Like I said, it got personal. For whatever reason, Zach Taylor sent him a fine letter saying that if you're not at mandatory minicamp 30 days out, then we're going to fine you. And he's thinking, what does this mean? We're not getting a deal done in the next 30 days. Again, it sounds like this has gotten off track, off rails, and right now both sides needed to get back on track to see if there's a way to figure it out. They got deals done for Jamar Chase. Mm-hmm. They got deals done for T. Higgins. They have not gotten Trey Hendrickson done, and this is going to be an issue until there is a deal that gets done.
Of course, as you mentioned, plenty of time to get a deal done, but it does seem like there seems to be some mending of fences that has to be done before they can get there. Switching now to the schedule release, which is this week. So far, more than 10 games on the 2025 NFL schedule have been announced this week. including that Monday Night Football Week 10 matchup we talked about earlier between the Eagles and the Packers. And off of that, we want to talk about the Packers. They scored just 10